Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you watch this in the world. I hope you guys are doing okay. So today we're going to be talking about a topic that King J brought up on Twitter, and I think it's something that we're all feeling, it's something that we're all experiencing, and I think it lends to the poor player retention that we're starting to see from Tekken 8. And so we'll jump straight into the tweet and then I'll give you my thoughts at the end. So King J tweeted out saying, "Am I the only one who cannot play Tekken 8 longer than 3 to 5 hours? My mind feels crazy tired. Guess it might be all the guessing at a fast rate or something. Feel like fatigue kicks in at like 2 hours, but I still play on. Just found it interesting as it never happened before." He goes on to say, "Defo liking the game more than the release patch and don't think it's me getting old. I think the amount of 50-50 situations are way more difficult at high level." Neon then replies saying, "Unfortunately, I'm a victim to this. I feel like I cannot play after like an hour. It's not because I'm tired, it's because I can't keep up, because I win a lot, then after I am on a losing streak, it's a very unbalanced cycle for me." And King J replies saying, "I feel the exact problem. We'll win and be on a streak and then lose, then be on a streak again. Happy it's not just me that feels it." Fergus then tweets out saying, "It's a really hard stream game. Takes a lot more of your focus than Tekken 7 for sure. Adds a lot more mental fatigue." And King J replies saying, "Damn, you feel the same way." And Fergus says, "That or we're getting old." Goes on to say that it's demanding and stressful. It's very hard to come with a strategy like other games. Big Brendan, shouts to Big Brendan, says, "Nah, you ain't the only one, my bro. I can only find myself playing 3 hours max. On a really steady day, I could potentially go longer, but days like that are rare." And Professor Liquid says, "Yeah, it's like having to use your Sharingan for much longer. Tekken 8 forces the pace through mechanics and more aggressive gameplay being favored/rewarded versus methodical defensive gameplay of Tekken 7 where the pace was decided by the player." Street says 2 to 3 hours max for one session, then I need a break. Iggy says, "I can't even get past the title screen." And then your friend's friend says, "Not only you, it could also be a sign of maturity. I'm already tired after 25 minutes of playing. I'm forcing myself to enjoy it. The constant rush down on top of us having more responsibilities outside of Tekken is too much. Tekken ain't as fun as it used to be." And these tweets just go on and on and on. A lot of people saying the same thing over and over again. A lot of people are saying it might be your age. I don't actually think it's that, because we were all playing Tekken 7 mere days before Tekken 8 came out, and I never felt this way, and I feel this way about Tekken 8. 2 to 3 hours for me on any game, unless I'm playing with a large group of friends or I'm streaming, is too much for me anyway. So normally I would play Tekken for maybe 1 hour maximum in the day. I might switch on Yakuza and play it for an hour if I had time, but usually my gaming consists of maybe 1 hour a day. It might have slightly increased recently because Helldivers came out and I'm spending a little bit too much time on that with my friends, but in general, an hour a day. I'm finding myself on Tekken 8 outside of playing on stream with you guys 30 minutes max, and I get kind of fed up with the game and I turn it off. And I do feel like that's because of all the guessing in this game. I feel like there is too much guesswork. In Tekken 7, I could play that game for hours and not feel like I need to take a break, because it doesn't feel like a constant guessing game. In Tekken 7, it feels like you're being rewarded for playing more, because the more you play, the more you learn, the more you stack, the more you make it difficult for your opponents to read you and formulate a game plan to overcome you. So you feel rewarded, you feel like you're climbing a mountain and there's gold at the top of the mountain. In Tekken 8, it is incredibly difficult to create a game plan because the system forces you to stand still in certain situations, so you don't have the opportunity to move around the way you could in Tekken 7 or Tekken 6 or Tekken Tag 2. Now obviously all of these games have had their problems. Tekken Tag 2 was criticized for having super long combos that end in a wall combo and do way too much damage. Tekken 6 was criticized for its absurd rage mechanics. It's the first time we saw rage and it was over the top, but I've never felt the way I feel about Tekken right now. I've got to say, and I mean this honestly, now the game has been out for a couple of months, I do still enjoy playing Tekken, but I enjoy playing it in much smaller doses. And when me and some of my friends link up now and we're playing offline, we don't actually play Tekken that much. We've kind of gone back to playing a little bit of Smash Brothers, switching on Street Fighter 6. Before it used to be very long Tekken sessions mixed in with Soul Calibur. That's just not happening these days. We're switching on Mario Kart, Mario Party, and then if we go to fighting games, we're still looking at Tenkaichi. We switch on Street Fighter 6. It's just not there anymore. The drive to play Tekken is not there anymore, and I do believe it's because of the heat mechanic. I believe the heat mechanic has dragged this game down to a point that I don't know if it can return from it. I don't know if they're going to balance this game in a way that makes the heat mechanic more engaging for the player and more nuanced, because in its current state, I can't play Tekken for more than an hour, and that is really pushing it. And I feel exactly the same way that these guys feel. I'm glad that King J actually brought this up, because it slipped my mind to talk about it, but I feel exactly what he's feeling. He's on the money, he's spot on. Now I'm sure not all of you feel like that. I've read your comments. I always read all the comments that come through to my videos, because obviously if you spend your time commenting on my video, I will spend my time reading it. So I know not all of you feel this way. I know some people like the heat mechanic, but there is a large number of people, both casual, intermediate and pro, that really don't like this mechanic. And I think the reason they don't like the mechanic is that it's forcing you to be in situations. When someone pops heat, the dynamic of Tekken changes completely. It stops being Tekken and it turns into something entirely different. Now, heat's not the only problem. There are problems elsewhere. There's issues with certain moves jailing when they shouldn't be. There's issues with general defense in Tekken 8, but I do feel like all of this is overwhelmed by the absolute unga bunga that the heat mechanic provides. And it's a massive shame because Tekken's always been a frustrating fighting game, but it's been frustrating because you lack skill, and so you play more and you play more and you play better plays, and like I said earlier, you work your way up that mountain. But now it's frustrating because it doesn't feel like you can work past certain things. Now, I'm not saying that you can't get better at Tekken 8. I feel like I've gotten better at the game. I feel like I understand the game a little bit better. I understand Feng Wei a little bit better. I understand matchups better, but there is definitely a ceiling that exists now that is stopping you and stopping a lot of players from going beyond it because the system mechanics simply will not allow it. The system mechanics are designed in a way that forces you to take 50-50s, and when you're guessing all day long, it stops being fun. And the reactions that you have to make are done in split seconds, and so it's completely stacked against the defender. And I have to wonder if Michael Murray and Harada are paying attention to the discourse going on online. Tekken's retention rate is dropping quite quickly. Its player base is dropping quite quickly. It's not able to retain the level of players that Street Fighter 6 has. Granted, Street Fighter 6 has been out for longer, but so has Mortal Kombat 1, and we've seen how Mortal Kombat 1 is doing. Mortal Kombat 1 is not doing well at all. Even as of now, the player base is very small in comparison to Tekken and Street Fighter. So Tekken and Street Fighter are the two that I look to compete with each other, and Street Fighter is blowing him out of the water right now. Now obviously we just had Akuma drop in Street Fighter 6, so that could be a reason for the boost in players, but even before Akuma had dropped, Street Fighter 6 seemed to be on a steady trajectory. Now I'm not saying there's not issues with that game at all. I know there's problems, I know there's issues that people in the community have with the game, but Tekken 8, in my opinion, is really going to start to suffer if something doesn't change, because it doesn't really matter now how many characters you add into the game. The issue now is that players are starting to feel fatigued much quicker than they would on Tekken 7. There's even some of you that have been subscribed to this channel for a long time that I played Tekken 7 with 4 hours, so you can even attest to what I'm saying. There was a player that I would message very regularly called T-Pod. I don't know if T-Pod is still playing fighting games, but he was playing Mortal Kombat and he was also a Tekken player, a very good one. And we would play for a very long time. I can't imagine playing his Kazuya for that length of time in Tekken 8 because half of the game will be Tekken and the other half will just be a complete guessing game. Tekken was already mentally taxing when the opponent is at the wall. It is now astronomically worse with heat. People that are playing competitively do not like guessing, and before you say, well, no one cares about what the competitive players have to say because they're a very small chunk of the player base, I'm talking about ranked. Ranked is not casual mode. Ranked is a competitive mode. You've gone in there to compete for points. Therefore, you're playing competitively on some level. And it's no fun when you're fighting for points to climb a leaderboard, but you don't really have control over how some of the match is going because the system has forced you to stand in place. And I don't want anyone to think that this is something that's new, that people are just complaining. This is something that has been happening in fighting games for a very long time. We can go back as far as Soul Calibur 4. Now in Soul Calibur 4, there was this very weird system where if you broke like 3 pieces of armor on your opponent, you could kill them in one hit. And for a casual player, it might have been funny and silly and goofy, but for people that are playing ranked, for people that are playing competitively, for people that are going to tournaments, that is unacceptable. For you to have a one-touch kill move that I can basically not really avoid because of the situation the system puts you in is not going to be okay. So when Soul Calibur 5 came out, they looked at the backlash, they looked at the negative feedback, and they introduced regular super moves. Now even regular super moves in Soul Calibur at the time was very alien, but it wasn't so over the top that people felt it was unacceptable. And some characters, like the character I played, Algo, really benefited from it. So it didn't feel like it had just gone too far. Also, the supers were handled quite well in Soul Calibur 5. You had to earn your meter. Now in the final round, it did give you meter, which I was never really a fan of. It worked out for me, especially because of the character I played, but if you looked at it objectively, it wasn't very good. But overall, Soul Calibur 5's super meter was acceptable. But Soul Calibur 4 is a perfect example of when you force players into situations that A, the aggressor did not really earn, and B, the defender can't do anything about, it becomes too mentally taxing and they want to turn the game off. You would find yourself defending a lot of different situations that you wouldn't otherwise look out for because the system forced you to basically take a one-hit kill had you guessed wrong. And in Tekken's case, I completely understand because Tekken 7, although it included some new systems that were quite alien to us, like the armored moves, like the super moves, they weren't so over the top. But I guess the thought process for the developers was that, where do we go from here? What do we include? And so they've taken out the rage drive and replaced it with the heat heat mechanic, which is like a more buffed up version. And I guess the thought process was that we can't stay the same, we have to change things up. And I respect the effort and I respect the idea to try and change things up and bring Tekken into a new age, but sometimes you miss, and I think that this was a massive miss, and I think the fatigue is going to grow. I experienced that fatigue on Mortal Kombat. I think a lot of players experience that fatigue on Mortal Kombat because Mortal Kombat is another game that forces you into situations that you simply cannot escape from. Now NRS has gone through several lengths to try and alleviate some of that, but the simple fact of the matter is that everything does chip in the game, and so in certain situations you are screwed and there's nothing that you can do. There's also an overabundance of characters that just complete strings and then press down one and go straight back into it, and it becomes a very frustrating experience, and those sort of things become very fatigue inducing. You don't feel like you want to play anymore because you feel like you're dealing with bullshit on bullshit on bullshit. Now, fighting games have always had BS. We've all been fans of Marvel vs. Capcom. Marvel vs. Capcom is like the poster child of BS, but you have to even out the BS with fun, and I think that's where Tekken 8 might be lacking a little bit. Now, like I said, without heat engaged, Tekken 8 is quite fun because it feels like Tekken. When the heat is engaged, it doesn't feel like that game anymore. It feels like you're playing something entirely different, and I think they need to really rework the system to stop people from like King J, for example, or Fergus, or myself, or the many other players that feel burnt out because the system is not allowing them to play the game that they would like to play. Sometimes people will do a heat attack on me and I'll have an idea of what they're going to do because they've done it over and over again, but the game doesn't allow me to really move around the way I'd want to, so I'm sort of forced into a situation where I duck or I stand guard. Now, you can obviously use your rage out in between some things, and there are options here and there, it's just the options are very limited. But I didn't want anyone to think that this is a new thing. This is not a new thing for any of the new players here. This has even been happening on some anime games. On the Ninja Storm games, it happened throughout the years. They added systems into the game that people weren't happy about. On several Dragon Ball Arena Fighter games, they added systems into games that people weren't happy about. If you look at a game like Tenkaichi 3, that game, in my opinion, whilst it can be a bit crazy, I think it was actually pretty well balanced, all things considered. There were a very strong amount of offensive mechanics and there were equally very good defensive mechanics, and the game let you move around in a way that could stop people from doing certain things. You were never really locked into something. Now, I think people did discover bugs and a few infinites here and there, and back in those days it was very hard to patch things out the way they can now, but if you consider the age it came from and how well it did for so long, you can see that although it's mentally taxing because the game has so many different features, you don't feel fatigued because you feel like you're always in control. You just need to figure out the best route. It's a bit of a disappointing situation for me because I love Tekken. I've always been a Tekken fan. I've been playing Tekken since Tekken 1, and I've never felt this kind of burnout with Tekken before. Now, obviously this is a first world problem. Before anyone says go outside and touch grass, we're just discussing Tekken, okay? Get off your high horse, relax. After this video is done, I'm going to go to the gym, probably going to hang out with friends, maybe play some Helldivers later on. Nobody's losing sleep over this. We're simply discussing the state of Tekken 8 and how it's going to progress going forward, because I can't see this game doing as well as Tekken 7 in terms of player retention and how many people came back to Tekken 7 and stayed on it with the heat mechanic in the state that it's in. I doubt we will ever see a mechanic like heat come back. It is way too controversial to put in a game like Tekken that has always been viewed in a certain light, and now it's sort of been taken out of that light, and it's I don't know, it's turned into something that I don't really recognize anymore. I remember having this conversation with you guys in one of the other videos quite some time ago, and I called the video Tekken is not Tekken, and I was describing how some players felt like Tekken 8 was no longer the Tekken that they recognized, and I think the way I framed the arguments in that video weren't particularly good. I tried to go back and understand why people had a bit of contention with it. The current iteration of Tekken is obviously Tekken, like in the more literal sense, which is what I was trying to say, but I understand what they're talking about, the idea of Tekken and the way we've known Tekken to be for so many years. Even with the inclusion of a rage mechanic, even with the inclusion of super moves, it's never been this egregious and this outrageous that we feel like Tekken isn't really Tekken anymore. It feels more like an anime game sometimes, which is not a good thing. Tekken shouldn't feel like an anime game. Tekken always, to me at least, felt like the most raw martial arts game. I guess you could probably say that Virtua Fighter sat in that bracket, but Tekken had so much more going for it, and so there were certain things that we found acceptable, certain things that we let slide, a fighting kangaroo, a fighting dinosaur, fighting bears, and even devils flying around, because there was enough of grounded martial arts and non-anime BS in the game for us to look past certain things. Because people always say, well, bears have always existed, Yoshimitsu's always been there, and I hear all of that, but it has never been to this level. Now it feels like everybody has become that. And we spoke about Lars before, we've spoken about Rain trainer. We've spoken about these characters that disorientate you and spin around the screen, and Victor teleports. But this is happening with everyone really. I mean, if you think about it, everybody's got a super dash now. Everybody's very plus on block. Everybody is chipping your life away like it's Mortal Kombat. It feels like Tekken has taken loads of different aspects of other fighting games and meshed them into it, and it's kind of lost its identity a little bit. And I think that's why the more hardcore Tekken player base is having a hard time keeping the game on. I don't even really feel enthusiastic to play it. Like sometimes I come back home and I'm like, oh, I want to play some Tekken, and after half an hour I'm like, yeah, I think I'm done. And I never felt like that before. So I'd like to know what you guys feel about the game. Do you feel some level of fatigue because of the 50-50s, or do you think it's just some of the old fogies and the old pro players and some of the older people in the scene that are just moaning and complaining and should get over it and get with the times? Also, by the way, before the video ends, since we're talking about fighting games and Bandai Namco, did anybody see that Dragon Ball trailer? I pray to the heavens that Sparking Zero is good, because it looks so sick and there's so many people that are excited for this game. I saw Tendo tweeting out saying that he's a Gogeta main, I think, or Vegeta, one of them. I've already seen Margin Vegeta playable. That was my old main. Let me know what you guys think of the new trailer. If you haven't seen it, watch it and then come back here and leave your comment. I can't wait for the game. I pray that they don't let us down like Ninja Storm. I pray that the online works correctly, because if that game comes out and it bangs and it's actually as competitive as Tenkaichi 3 was, because if you haven't played Tenkaichi 3, that was a very competitive game and very difficult, then we're gonna have a lot of fun on this game. But we can only hope. If it launches in the state that JoJo's Bizarre Adventure did, with the shambolic online, then we are cooked. We are cooked, because we're not going to see another one of these games for a very long time. So one can only hope. Anyways guys, take care, have a good day, and peace.